Just because something's trending doesn't mean it'll work for your business. So let's talk about the difference between hype and real insight. Hi all, and welcome to Data Lens, the short series where we talk about market research in the outdoor hospitality industry. Today, I'm here with Scott Barr, the president of Cairn Consulting Group. With over 35 years of market research experience, Scott has a wealth of knowledge to share, and I'm asking him the questions that you want to know. Let's hop in. On today's episode, we'll be talking about what TikTok and YouTube trends can't tell you, but research can. All right, Scott, so kicking things off today, any insight, input?
Oh, just at the top of my head, to get the most rounded perspective, you want to do a lot of listening overall. But one approach has many advantages over the other. And I guess we'll get into that in detail as we proceed with our conversation.
So kicking things off here, Scott, why are viral trends risky for long-term strategy?
For one thing, those are responsive. Everything there is responsive. That what you're seeing in terms of the viral trends is how people are responding to content. And when they speak to each other and they're spreading that message amongst themselves. So it becomes something that happens just within the circle of people who are also involved in that. And some of them, they can be very widespread, but it's still limited. You're not reaching everyone. And so these trends, in many cases, the social media trends that you see are just with a very limited audience, which is one of the cautionary notes that we'll probably talk about even more today, is to be very careful about that, just for that simple reason that you don't know who it is that these issues are trending with.
Very interesting. Piggybacking off of that, Scott, so what are the limits of using social media for business research?
Really, the limits are the lack of control you have over it. It is what I would call a passive conversation. It's not a conversation that you have created necessarily. It's one you're observing. There's nothing wrong with observing. We've talked about that in the past. However, if you're making a business decision off something that you don't have any control over, how the questioning goes, how people are chosen, how they choose to respond, you're getting what could be a very misleading read on what's happening out there. Again, the whole idea is if you're just observing, that's some information, but it can be such a small window into it. And I would offer that one of the things that we do in research is called ethnographies, which is observational research. And it could be, for example, that you observe how people interact with your campground, how they interact with your staff, how they navigate the campground, what they're doing, all those things. Those are observational. And you can learn from that. However, if you really want to solve problems, you need to ask the people, you need to intervene, and you need to actively engage in a dialogue and a conversation. Other than that, you're only getting a very small part of the picture.
Very interesting. So, Scott, how does market research go deeper than trending content?
It's because in market research, our mission is to dig deeper. What we do is we engage with the audience at a much deeper level. We have a conversation, a back and forth, if you will. And so what we're doing is we're going to ask people questions, and their answer to that question may prompt another one, and that may prompt another one, and so on. So now you're really digging into a topic. Again, as I noted a moment ago, that it allows you control. You have control over the conversation. You have control over what's going on in terms of the back and forth. And you're not at the whim of what is out there that's trending, and having people, they're much more likely to interact with each other, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a situation where you don't have any control over that. All you can do is observe. All you can do is look at and see how people are interacting with each other and what they're saying. Plus, a trending topic on social media, it's worth attending to. And what we do is we typically tell people if something's trending, let's research it. Let's include it as a topic in our next round of research, because we're going to dig into that topic and find out what's driving it, what's behind this trending topic. And that's really where research steps in and takes over the conversation a little bit and allows you to have confidence in what's really going on. I could give a number of examples, but say, for example, recently, one of the topics that came up was Canadian tourism in the US entering this season. And we saw that it was trending on social media, that people were saying they weren't going to, from Canada, weren't going to come to the US for their vacations this summer. And so what we did is we went out and we actually asked Canadian leisure travelers, is this true? Are you really not? And if you're not, why? You know, what's behind that? And so we were able to then quantify, at least within a snapshot, of kind of the number of people who might normally travel to the US and decided not to. We were also able to establish the reasons behind that, and then also offer what the longer term outlook was. Is this a lasting thing? Is it just this moment in time that it's occurring? So we took a trending social media topic in leisure travel and camping, outdoor hospitality, obviously, because that's where we are, and we dug into it. So the social media trend, again, prompted the research, but the social media wasn't going to tell us, wasn't going to give us the answers as to why. We had to go out and do that ourselves.
So what tools, Scott, would you say help you separate signal from noise?
The tools really include a lot of survey work, but what you have to do is make sure that you know who you're talking to in your surveys, as well as your interviews. I would also invite people to do some interviews up front before even engaging in a survey. Again, screen people for inclusion pretty strictly, making sure that they fit the profile, that there's an understanding of the topic. That's going to help get to the crux of the issue, as well as the idea of how you question people. For example, how do you get past some of the noise? I'll give an example from a couple of years ago, when a lot of campgrounds were talking about people canceling reservations and people avoiding certain areas because of overcrowding. And again, this was a topic that there was a lot of noise about out there, whether it was people talking, whether it was on social media, people talked about the issue of overcrowding. And so again, what we did is we went and we filtered through and we found people based on whether they had actually experienced it themselves. So did you try to make a reservation at a place that you normally would go to? You couldn't get that reservation, or it didn't even have to be someplace they'd been to, but had you stayed at a campground that was just jam-packed full, it was overcrowded itself, or did you just hear about it? And did you change your behavior based on whether or not you heard about overcrowding? And what we found was during this phase, overcrowding was really no longer an issue at the campground level. Campgrounds had plenty of sites, but the noise that was out there was still generating a lot of misconceptions about the ability of people to find campsites. So then what you do is you go back to the industry and you say, hey, you need to really tell people you have sites available. You need to go out there and make sure that people are informed about your availability, because there is all this noise out there about overcrowding and the ability to get campsites. What you have to do is you have to filter through that. You have to make sure that you're digging into that topic appropriately, so that you understand that from the individual level. Again, for example, if you just ask someone, and you could even post a question on social media at the time, are campgrounds overcrowded? And you're going to have all these people are going to say yes. And if you just walk away from that conversation, you're going to be like, oh wow, campgrounds are really overcrowded. But again, when you start applying those filters, it's, have you personally experienced it? Have you tried to make a reservation and couldn't get one? Versus have you Do you know someone that experienced it, or have you just heard about it on social media? And so now what you've done is you've scraped through, and now you know more about the issue. That's what I would recommend people do in terms of getting past some of that noise and digging into the topic a little bit more specifically.
Very interesting, because it's like you hear about all this content and all this stuff all the time about these new trends and everything, and then yeah, you're right, it's almost, have you experienced it firsthand? It's like question number one. Absolutely fascinating. So yeah, hopping into our last question here, Scott. So can research help you decide which trend and or trends is worth following?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that you can do is how long has this topic been trending on social media, for one thing, but also who is it that is a part of this trend? Who is participating in this trend? And the only way to do that is to do your research. If you just look at social media, you're going to do guess. You're going to look at people's Facebook profiles and guess who they are and what they do. And to do that person by person, by the way, that's quite a task, especially to get enough of them so you actually understand. So the research, again, is going to allow you to go and ask at a much larger scale with much less effort how people are perceiving these trends. Where are they going? What's their past behavior? What, is the past going to predict the future in this case? But also look at the emotional connections people have to these trends. I think that's really important, and it's something we're going to talk about a lot more in the coming months, is the idea of the emotional connections and the emotion tied to decisions, because that's really what you want to get to, is what kind of emotions do these topics elicit from people? How are they responding to it? Are they actually taking action themselves at a personal level? It's the only way you're going to get to research, is the only way you're going to get to those findings, by the way, is in terms of the emotional connections, as well as, are they changing behavior? Are these just trends that people are just talking about and shouting from the rooftop? Again, I'll use in our industry an example. We see a lot of people in our research who say that they're going to do different outdoors trendy things like forest bathing. A lot of people say, like for example, last year, a lot of people said that they're going to forest bathe this year. What we're going to do first of the year is we're going to ask how many people actually did go forest bathing and see what that gap is. Because there's the idea of this being a trendy topic versus do people actually respond to it? Do they actually participate in these trends? What's your level of participation? And that, again, is where research comes in, because you don't know. There's a lot of people out there, by the way, writing articles within our industry about topics that are not researched. They are not data-based. And it can become dangerous to make decisions based on that. That's why we invite everyone to the table. Let's talk about research. Let's talk about data, because what the trends do is they provide us research topics. That's what they do. It's a research topic. And that's great. So I'm not minimizing these trends. What I'm saying is, don't make your decisions off them. Use them as topics for further exploration, and you'll be much further ahead with that approach.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that input today. And I guess as a little follow-up bonus question too, Scott, so what are your thoughts on, I know it's very small, but how most social medias have that extra little feature that says TikTok poll or Instagram social media poll. What do you think of those kind of polls and how to use that data from a trend perspective?
I would say they're of probably less than minimal value. I would say they're misleading. And not to be too harsh, but they're a way for people to try to get people more engaged with the topic, with their social media channels. They're not designed to provide actual information. I see these once in a while and I cringe every time I see one. I've seen people on like X, formerly known as Twitter, post a poll and they'll say, look, everybody's saying this. And if everybody is 25 people, then okay, But no, that's not the case. And I think people use them to support an agenda, typically. Not to get too harsh, but things like that make our job harder. I guess that's why I am a little harsh about it. But they can be fun sometimes. And if that's the case, that's fine if they're done in fun, but they're not informational.
Very interesting. That very fascinating kind of way to finish off today's conversation. So thanks as always, and thank you all for joining us today for another episode of Data Lens from Cairn Consulting Group. Today we covered what TikTok and YouTube trends can't tell you, but research can. Don't forget to leave a comment or question for next week's episode. Hit that like button if you like it. As always, subscribe so you never miss out. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.